The Wild West, where shootouts were as common as spittoons, and legends were made with a six-shooter in one hand and a horse's reins in the other. The outlaws of this era weren't just men with rugged jaws and quick trigger fingers. Nope, the Wild West had its fair share of legendary women too. Among them stands Rose Dunn, or simply the Rose of Cimarron. Whichever name you pick, one thing's for sure. Rose Dunn was not your typical prairie flower. Today we're diving into the life of a girl who lived on the edge of the law and who, despite her innocent looks, became one of the most infamous female outlaws of her time. Buckle up, cowpokes, this ride is about to get wild! Born in 1878 in Oklahoma Territory, Rose Dunn grew up in a time when the West was still very much untamed. She was the youngest of 10 children. Yeah, you heard that right. You can imagine the kind of mischief a girl had to get into just to stand out. But Rose wasn't just a mischief maker. She was smart and resourceful, traits that would serve her well in the rough and tumble world she was about to enter. Now, let's set the stage. By the time Rose hit her teens, she was already showing signs that she wasn't going to be some docile farm girl. Nope, she had bigger, more dangerous things in mind. Her brothers were known as local troublemakers, outlaws themselves, and they taught their little sister more than just how to ride a horse. They showed her how to handle guns, scout locations, and, most importantly, how to keep her mouth shut. It's safe to say that Rose Dunn wasn't just a girl who played with dolls. She was one who knew how to handle a Winchester. Rose's fateful entrance into the Wild West outlaw scene came when she met George Bittercreek Newcomb, a notorious member of the Wild Bunch gang. And folks, it was love at first. Shootout? Well, sort of. George, an outlaw with a price on his head, was smitten with this sharp-witted, gunslinging teenager, and before long, Rose was riding alongside him and his gang. They say love makes you do crazy things, but for Rose, love meant becoming an accomplice in bank heists, robberies, and gunfights. Talk about a dangerous liaison. Rose wasn't just hanging around looking pretty. She was actively involved in the gang's operations. She served as a lookout, a courier, and in some cases, she even picked up a gun herself. Who said romance was dead? Now, George Newcomb's gang wasn't just any gang. These were some of the most feared outlaws in the territory. We're talking names like Bill Doolin and the Dalton Gang. These guys didn't just rob banks, they did it with flair, often escaping with bags of loot and leaving behind a trail of bullet casings and bewildered lawmen. And there was Rose Dunn, smack dab in the middle of it all. With her innocent looks, she could pass for any farm girl, which made her the perfect spy and scout for the gang. But don't be fooled by that baby face. Rose was as tough as they come. She was said to be quick with a pistol, and when her gang needed her, she didn't hesitate. In fact, there's one particular incident that truly cemented Rose's reputation as the Rose of Cimarron. Among the many legends of Rose Dunn's time with the Wild Bunch, one story stands out above the rest, an infamous skirmish that would forever solidify her place in Wild West lore. This was no ordinary bank robbery or train heist. No, this was the Battle of Ingalls, a gunfight so intense it would make any dime novel writer blush with excitement. And at the heart of it all, our very own Rose Dunn. The year was 1893, and the Wild Bunch had made the small town of Ingalls, Oklahoma, their unofficial hideout. It was a quiet little town, far from the prying eyes of lawmen, or so they thought. The gang was in the midst of a break from their usual outlaw activities, hunkered down at a saloon, probably thinking about their next heist or counting the spoils of their last one. Little did they know, a posse of U.S. Marshals was closing in, ready to spring a trap and capture the entire gang in one fell swoop. But here's the thing about the Wild Bunch. They weren't exactly known for going down without a fight. And this fight? It was about to become legendary. The marshals had the element of surprise on their side, but surprise only lasts so long when bullets start flying. As the lawmen surrounded the saloon, the gang realized they were trapped. Gunfire erupted, turning the streets of Ingalls into a war zone. In the chaos, several members of the Wild Bunch were wounded, including George Bittercreek Newcomb, Rose's lover, and one of the gang's most notorious outlaws. Now, here's where Rose Dunn stepped into the spotlight. With bullets whizzing past and men falling left and right, Rose wasn't content to sit on the sidelines. She saw Newcomb pinned down and injured, and without a moment's hesitation, she made a daring move that would later earn her the nickname, the Rose of Cimarron. While the marshals were focused on the gang members in the saloon, Rose sprinted across the open ground, yes, in the middle of a gunfight, dodging bullets as if she were in some kind of Wild West obstacle course. What was her goal? A Winchester rifle that had been left out in the open, just out of reach for Newcomb. To any sane person, running into a hail of gunfire would seem like a death wish, but not for Rose. She made it to the rifle, grabbed it, and sprinted back to Newcomb, handing him the weapon just as the marshals closed in. With his newfound firepower, Newcomb managed to fend off the marshals long enough for the gang to regroup and retreat. The Wild Bunch escaped, bloody, bruised, but alive, and much of that was thanks to Rose's bravery. But the battle wasn't without its costs. 3 U.S. Marshals were killed, and several more were injured. The town of Ingalls was left in ruins, with bullet holes marking every building and bloodstains covering the dusty streets. For the marshals, it was a devastating loss. For the Wild Bunch, it was a narrow escape, but it only added to their notoriety. As for Rose Dunn, her daring rescue of Newcomb became the stuff of legend. The newspapers of the time painted her as a heroine, a fearless young woman who had risked her life for love. Some even romanticized her role in the fight, turning her into a symbol of loyalty and bravery. Others, of course, saw her as nothing more than an accomplice to a gang of ruthless criminals. But here's the thing. Being an outlaw isn't all excitement and glory. It's more like running from the law, always looking over your shoulder, and knowing that at any given moment, someone could be coming to collect the bounty on your head. For George Bittercreek Newcomb, that bounty was becoming too tempting for some. And here's where things get messy. In 1895, George was gunned down by none other than Rose's own brothers. Yes, you heard that right. Her brothers, who had once been her mentors in the ways of outlaw life, were now bounty hunters. They killed Newcomb for the $5,000 reward, a huge sum at the time. The Wild West was ruthless, and loyalty? Well, that was a luxury most outlaws couldn't afford. Rose was devastated by Newcomb's death, but in the world she lived in, survival came first. After Newcomb's death, Rose Dunn's outlaw days began to wind down. Some say she reformed, others claim she never really gave up her wild ways. What we do know is that Rose found herself on the right side of the law more often than not after that. She married a man named Charles Albert Noble and settled into a quieter life. Well, as quiet as life can be for someone who had once dodged bullets and outwitted marshals. But did Rose truly leave her outlaw past behind? That's a question for the ages. Some say she quietly maintained ties to the criminal underworld. Others argue that she had simply grown tired of the endless chase and decided to retire while she still could. Either way, the legend of Rose Dunn continued to grow long after she hung up her spurs. In many ways, Rose Dunn's story is a testament to the unpredictable nature of the Wild West. Here was a woman who, despite her youth and innocent appearance, thrived in a world dominated by men with quick tempers and quicker guns. She wasn't just a damsel in distress or a sidekick to the outlaws. She was one of them, and she played her role as well as any of the infamous gunslingers. Rose Dunn's life raises an interesting question about the way we remember outlaws from that era. Often we think of these men and women as wild, untamable figures who lived by their own rules. But Rose's story shows us that the line between outlaw and hero wasn't always clear-cut. Sometimes it came down to nothing more than a twist of fate, or in Rose's case, a well-timed Winchester rifle. Rose lived until 1955, outlasting many of the legends of her time. She died at the ripe age of 76, far removed from the gunfights and bank heists of her youth. But her story remains a vivid reminder of the unpredictable, thrilling, and often tragic life of an outlaw.